Good morning. Welcome back to our third letter boss. And we have a guest today. This will be our first guest on our podcast. And Liana, who's our guest today?
I am excited to announce Danielle Isaac, and you will get a chance to learn a little bit more about her story. And you know, Lucinda, I loved the starting with our tradition of where it started, right? Where it began. And so we're going to continue to share those with you at the beginning of every podcast. But today, I think our guest has a really good where it started.
I think so too. I think we'll go with her where it started today. And I'm looking forward to hearing the whole story and sharing that with everyone.
Wonderful. I'm going to step out now and I'm going to let you introduce Danielle.
Awesome. Well, good morning, Danielle. Thank you for joining us today. And I'm looking forward to you sharing about your business. Could you give me a little overview of what your business is and what you do for folks out there?
Sure, yeah. My business is called Energize Businesses, and I work with starting up entrepreneurs, so first 5 years generally.
Awesome.
So it might be I'm trying to figure out how to take this business idea and bring it to life, or I have already launched it and I'm trying to figure out how to grow it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, and with sticking with our tradition of where it started, tell us where you started. How did you start
Sure,
your business?
So I remember distinctly, I was working for a corporation. I'd been there for 18 years. And I was a sales manager. So I oversaw about 80 sales employees, 6 sales supervisors, big team, very competitive and a lot of high pressure. And it was great. I mean, making great money, climbed the ladder, had a beautiful new home, had a beautiful daughter, 3-4 years old, been married for a long time. It was really great. However, you know, I went home in the evenings and I would be so exhausted and tired, I would hit the couch and just have no energy at the end of the day. Yeah. So here I have this beautiful 4-year-old, and a lot of times I just don't have the energy to even do things with her, care for her. And on the weekends, there was usually at least one day where I had no energy even to get off the couch and do all the chores, all the things that had been stacking up for the week. You know, I had a big, long to-do list, but no energy to do it. So I went to a doctor, and I said, I think something's wrong. I have no energy. And she ran a bunch of tests, and she said, I can't find anything wrong. Oh. And I was like, okay. And, of course, also when you're in those type of environments, I couldn't sleep very well, woke up in the middle of the night, couldn't go back to sleep, just always thinking about work and just always stressed out. So between that and then feeling unfulfilled with the work that I was doing, just really starting to feel like, I was telling Leona the story, like there was this period of time where I started to kind of disengage. And I started to see that this was kind of like this was a game that I didn't want to play anymore, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like I was a
understand.
pawn on the chessboard, but I don't know that I want to be the pawn anymore, right? And but I didn't know what that next thing was for me, you know, and I think we all get there, but I was like, I have no idea what I want to do that's different. So I ended up going to one of those conferences down in LA, this big rah-rah conference, never done anything like that before, bought my ticket, went down there by myself. And for 3 days, this particular speaker coach was like, what would you love your life to look like? And not just in career, but like your relationships, your health, your time and money freedom. Like, what would you love your life to look like? And nobody had ever asked me that question before. And so I would journal on it, and we would write out our 3-year vision for our lives. And all weekend, we just kept practicing that. We would tell other people that, and it felt completely unreal and impossible at the time. It was like, there's no way I can do that. But she said, no, if you can see it in your mind's eye, there's a way for you to bring it about. Right.
What do you want?
What do you want?
Not what do you think you can do, but what do you want?
Exactly. And so I enrolled in her year-long program which is really about how to work with your mind, your mindset, starting to believe in that bigger vision that you have for your life and actively taking steps towards it, not just in the area of career, that's one area, but also in health. You know, if you don't have your health, you don't have a career. You know, focusing on improving your relationships and what needs to be done there, and like growing in all of those areas, right?
Love it.
So I was in that program for a year, and I always felt great when I went to those conferences. And then I would go back to work, and it was like this heavy, heavy weight. Going back was so heavy, so hard to be there. Yeah. And the contrast of those two things, I went through that for I think about 6 months, where I was like, I realized my heart wasn't in it. I couldn't keep doing this. It wasn't fair to my team to stay. I had a lot of people counting on me. And so I realized, like, I need to leave. But I don't have the income yet, but I need to leave, right? So as I'm driving down the highway, it was Murray Boulevard in Beaverton. And driving down the highway, and I'm having this big debate in my head, and I see this car go by me with a bumper sticker, and it says, "Just let go, there's a net to catch you."
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm like, what? And of course, I'm like arguing with the bumper sticker, like, show me the net, you know? But there's a part of me that knows, like, that message was totally meant for me in that moment. And I've never seen that bumper sticker since, you know? And I was like, okay, so I'm moving into the place of acting on faith and trust that things are going to work out for me, and I have no idea how. And so I stepped out. I left that job. I gave my resignation, left that job, scared to death, but at the same time completely relieved. And one of my biggest reasons for wanting to leave is also my little daughter. You know, there were so many times where I was telling her, I don't have time for you. Like, she'd be like, Mom, can you come to this event at school, or can you go on this field trip? And so many times I just couldn't. My calendar was too busy, too full. And so many times I had to tell her no. And I was like, realize I had been that kid where my mom always said no, and I didn't want that for her. Yeah. So that's when I realized, like, I have to do something different. If not for me, then for her. Yeah. And so leaving that was like one of my most gratifying moments was the day that I got to pick her up from kindergarten and bring her home instead of her getting on the bus and going to the after school program, and just how proud I was because I had to work for that. Like, it was the scariest thing I ever did, but it was like the best thing I ever did. Yeah. And so, you know, I've been an entrepreneur for 8 years now, running my own business. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done. Because you do have to be committed to that track. It's not easy. For most of us, not an easy path at all. But it's really been a path of, like, walking in faith and trusting that as I need things, they're going to show up. And they have consistently.
Well, and I think we talked about that a little bit earlier. I got to that point in my career, too, where I had to remove that plan B option. Like, I couldn't say, okay, well, if it doesn't work, I'll go back. Like, you have to get to that place where I'm not just interested in making this happen. I'm committed because the sacrifice is worth it. Like, yeah. You made a huge sacrifice and added all this hard work to your load, but you got your time back to go pick up your daughter. Mm-hmm. Like, that's such an amazing gift to get back. Yeah. So I love that. That part of your story, but how did you go from sitting in the car looking at that bumper sticker, giving your resignation, to building this business now and going out on your own? What made you know that this was what you wanted to do?
Oh, great question. Yeah, it was interesting. Like, I had no idea when I was back at that conference that I wanted to be a coach. Like, that was not a concept I was even very familiar with. We didn't have coaches in my organization. So it was a very foreign concept. But when I saw that coach mentor up on the stage, I was like, I want to do what she's doing, because I love to teach. I was a trainer back in my early days. I love to teach. Okay. I love to mentor. And so I was like, I think I want to do that. And I love to teach people about how to work with mindset and law of attraction, and how to attract in your life the things that you're dreaming of, the things you can see but don't know how to get. And so I was like, I think I can at least certify in her program. That would be a good stepping stone. Because one of the things you learn is look at find the next step. You don't have to see the whole trail. Mm-hmm. Just find the next thing you can do, right? And I was like, well, I could certify under that program and become one of her coaches. So I started with that. And it was good, but something felt incomplete as I was enjoying working with the clients, and it was really fulfilling. But a lot of these clients were like, they were in the same boat as me. I don't like my job. Some of them were even more extreme burnout than I was in. And I was like, I need to help them find their way out. And they said, Danielle, can you help us? They had this idea of what they wanted to do next for their business. They didn't know how to make it happen. And I was like, well, who am I to show them? Like, I'm new at this game. But I was like, well, I can at least just help them find the next step, and then the next step, and the next step, right? So I started working with those initial clients, and sure enough, like one of them, she had this dream to start an Airbnb business, had no idea how. And we worked together on and off for about 2 years, and she launched her Airbnb. She was able to leave that job. She now has 5 Airbnbs, and I saw her get her time back and be able to spend time with her kids, and then heal from all the burnout that she'd done to her body, which we don't talk about that a lot, but that's part of the journey.
Well, we start sacrificing so much of our time that we're not taking time to take care of ourselves, to work out, to eat right, to get enough sleep. Or you get into that place where you're so stressed out in your job that you can't sleep at night because you're not fulfilled by it. And I have my clients, I tell them a lot of times, like, what portion of this job or what is it that feeds your soul out of it? And how can we design your work around the things that feed your soul? And so you must found like that coaching and mentoring aspect really fed your soul. Even though you might be working just as hard as you did at your other job, you're more fulfilled to where you are excited about your work.
Yeah. Well, and it's you want it is so fulfilling that you want more of it. But being a coach isn't just coaching. It's just like any other business. You got to learn how to market. You got to learn how to do sales. You got to do all the things so that you can actually have the clients to mentor. So it is a lot harder than it looks. You know, you have to learn how to become a business owner. And so that was the struggles, learning how to market myself. Never had to do that before. Learning how to do sales in a way that was comfortable and not salesy, you know. So many pieces and parts of that I think all entrepreneurs struggle with in one way, shape, or form is getting yourself out there and having the confidence too in yourself.
Yeah.
That's a big
I love
one.
what you just said. I hear that probably a dozen times a week. I don't want to be too salesy. And there's such a fine line because we really get in, our work is really about, you know, creating a life. We spend more time at work a lot of times than we do at home. So creating a life that we enjoy at work, but also getting financially stable to create the life that we want at home and be able to enjoy that. So I always tell, you know, like the agents, so that's most primarily what I work with coaching clients is, so if you're not salesy, which we don't want to be, right? You've got to be providing something. And in our business, we're providing value in the real estate market and our knowledge of, and our ability to market their properties and sell them and facilitate that sale. But at the end of the day, it's really about building a relationship. So you've got trust and you know each other and you know what that client wants and needs, and you can help get them to that point. So I imagine it's much like that in your business, is you have to develop that strong relationship. You can't advise them or coach them in their business unless you really have a relationship with them in their business.
Exactly, because it's a very intimate relationship between coach and the people that I'm coaching, because they have to trust me enough to listen and take the steps that I'm suggesting. And I've had both kinds of clients, the ones who said, okay, they'll do it, and then they go do their own thing, and then they keep having the same results, right? And then the ones who trust me enough to go, okay, I will try it your way, Danielle, and they'll go do it. And they're like, guess what? I got a new client, or, you know, I got a new lead or whatever. And I'm like, yes, it's actually not that hard of a process. It's just we get in our own way. We keep going back to what's familiar or comfortable or safe rather than taking that one move that feels risky, but is actually just the one move that can make a big difference. You know, it can open your doors up to maybe even a big client. You know, one that's really bringing in a lot of money for you, so you can just breathe for a little bit because now you got a nice paycheck coming in, you know?
Right. And I think that I hear that mostly we get in our own way most of the time. That's what I remember kind of tipping point, if you will, when I became a business owner. I basically was a business owner as an agent, but when I decided to buy the company and take it over, and I bought my partner out, and it was just me. And I found myself like you. I didn't have a child at the time, but I wasn't getting home in time to make dinner. I had a new marriage, and I was staying up late making flyers and cleaning the office, and I wasn't able to break free from that. And I had to step out, and because I kept saying, I can't afford an employee. I can't afford to hire somebody. I need to wait another year. And then I remember same thing. It wasn't a bumper sticker, but I was listening to a podcast, it was like a YouTube video driving, and it was about that you can't grow if you're not willing to take that risk. And I remember calling my very, very part-time employee, who is still with me today, and saying, can you go full-time this week? And she's like, well, yeah, I can. This is coming out of the recession. Of course, that's what you want to hear. I could go full-time. And that was where I went from kind of struggling to that growth. I still actually kept working late, but it was working on my business instead of in my business. I wasn't making flyers for the agents and trying to do bookkeeping at night. I was actually working on what's the next growth step. So tell me a little bit about, like, with your clients, how you articulate where it is what they need to do to go from either from the idea point to actually making income so they can quit their other jobs or support themselves. Where is that? How do you go into that and start dissecting that to what they need to do for their next step?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because one of the things I remind my clients is you actually probably know the answers to these questions, but you're clouding it with all the self-doubt and confusion and all of that. So I will say, okay, so we need to, like, for example, if you need to market more, and like, what are your avenues? What are the ways that you could market yourself in a bigger way? Where are you at right now? And then where do you want to get yourself out in a bigger way? And so they already have ideas about that almost all the time. They're like, oh, well, I could market myself here and there and there. And I'm like, so we map it out. And I'm like, okay, here's all the places that you said you would market yourself. And yes, those will all grow your business. And then we talk about strategic, which ones could bring in reoccurring revenue for them, which ones could bring in like more, like I have one person, it's like she sells a product, more of the consumers, and then maybe she can get some big reoccurring accounts with like hotels or things like that where she could sell her product in it. So she's not like struggling so much, mm-hmm. right? So we talk about the strategy and the logic behind all those different avenues. And then we talk about also which ones are closest to her to reach right now. She's already got connections in those areas. And then which ones are further out where maybe she's going to have to start looking around and finding some connections. So what's close at hand and what's further away. And just helping them identify, there's things that are like right under their nose that they can't see or they've been hesitating on. That's like, just take that step because that's there for a reason, right?
Is that breaking through that tipping point in your business? And what do you think gets in their way the most from taking that next step?
It's always their self-doubt. There's some story they're telling themselves of like, oh, they're going to say no, or there's some fear, the fear of rejection. Right.
That's probably the biggest thing, right?
Yes.
We hesitate to make the ask because we're afraid we're going to get a no, but we already don't have it anyway, right? So what are you hurting when you step out in faith and say, okay, I'm going to just put it out there and see what they say? I know that my biggest fear when I went from being just a solo agent to I'm going to buy the business was what if, every time I opened a new office or hung a picture on a wall or anything, I thought, God, I hope someday I'm not taking this down because I'm closing because I failed. Like it would always, that little self-doubt would be in the back until I finally got to this place where I'm just like, I'm not even think about that anymore. That mm-hmm. isn't an option. Like failure isn't an option at this point where I'm at. Like I would keep going. That's what, but getting to that place, how do you get to that place where you're just like, you remove all that self-doubt?
Yeah, it's like you have to retrain your mind. I mean, people don't understand that skill set is important, but mindset's even more important. You have to learn to retrain this mind because that mind's going to talk you out of everything all the time. It's going to make you second guess yourself. It's going to make you sabotage yourself from taking the steps that you need. And not just in work, in everything. Mm-hmm. Your relationships. Maybe you've been looking for that special someone, but you don't go out and date. You don't put yourself out there because you're afraid of getting hurt. You know, it shows up in all areas of your life. So you've got to learn how to understand how your mind works and how you need to override it and recognize the self-sabotage, right? And then, and take the steps anyway. You know, that you usually know the next step. Yeah. And you got to just start taking it.
Well, and we talk about that a lot with our agents. You know, they start out knowing, you know, they get into this thinking it's about houses and selling homes, and it's really about people. And I used to teach the real estate course in the college, and I'd get with a class and I'd tell them, why are you here? And they're like, well, I like houses and I like interior design. And, you know, I always thought it'd be fun and I want to be my own boss. And they'd give me all these things. And I was like, well, do you like people? And a lot of them didn't say they don't like people, but they don't really want to work with people. And I'm like, because it's about people. It's about relationships. It's about building lots and lots and lots of relationships so that you're not just selling homes for those few that you have. You're selling homes for the hundreds of relationships they have, and they feel confident in referring you. And that's probably every business to grow is to some point. I mean, maybe when you get in a bigger sale, it's like making connections and it's the product you provide, but it's still going to go back to those relationships that will introduce you to those connections.
Absolutely.
And I was reminded of that this week. Just, you know, I had a personal issue of something where I needed something that didn't seem obtainable to get because I didn't know the right person. And my boyfriend's like, well, I know somebody. And it was really not about like, did you have enough money? Did you have enough time? It was really just about knowing the right person. And once they even said, well, now that you got me to the right person, this isn't a problem. Like, it's about that relationship that you build along the way. And you're part of some networks, different business connection networks, and that probably is huge for getting referrals for your business.
Yeah, it's one of the things I try to do with my clients is get them into networking as quickly as possible, because I think we all have these big notions of like, oh, I'm going to build some ClickFunnels online. How do you know what your message is unless you've gotten out there and worked with enough clients that you really know what their pain points are, what they're struggling with, how you can help them? When you're a service, you have to know what's the best way I can serve, who are the people I want to serve, and what's the best way I can serve them. The only way you can know that is by developing close relationships and finding out what people need. I think we all are looking for the fast way to grow and make money. The only way that I know that's effective is to get out there and start connecting with people. And that's the only way you're going to kind of identify who you are, what your message is, what sets you apart from everybody else that's doing what you're doing. It's just to get out there and connect. And then people will start to tell you, like, ooh, what I like about you is this. This is different about you. That's why I hired you. You know, and like some people say, I hire you because you're not salesy. You know, I've seen a lot of coaches out there that are like, rah up on the stage, and they're like, but there's something more authentic about you, and they'll seek me out for that specifically.
It's about having that trust and then knowing that you have the knowledge. So we talked about like taking some of the steps of helping them build their business. So if they came to you with just an idea, when you're coaching someone in the very beginning from, you know, I want to quit my job, I have this idea, what do you start with?
I just start pulling information. So understanding the idea, what was their background, why do they love this idea, what lights them up about it, what kinds of clients do they see themselves working with. So any clues that they have in their own mind, my job is to mine that out of them so that I can now get a picture and hold a picture in my own mind of what they're trying to create.
And help them build that.
Yeah.
We talked last week a little bit about the business planning process of building out a business plan, because I've always, you know, felt like you can't really open a business unless you have a plan in mind. And like you said, you have to ask lots of questions because you have to help them build that vision. And without that vision, it's like you can't, maybe you're going to just take that one little piece, like you went and got your certification, but you had to have a vision of where you wanted that to go. And you maybe didn't know it was going to go into this coaching business, but you knew what you wanted your life to look like. So when you built that out, was it like, I want to work this many hours a day, or I want to work from home, or I want to help a certain type? Tell me a little bit about, like, who was it that you wanted your client to be?
It was funny. Initially, I wanted my clients to be, or I thought my clients were going to be parents. And I was going to do more coaching on helping parents, which in a way it is, but it's really taken a different twist just based off of the clients that I attracted. I noticed I was attracting clients that were also struggling with burnout. Some of them had kids and some of them did not. You know, I don't think it's isolated to just single moms or whatever. So it was just kind of seeing what was coming towards me, what I was naturally attracting, and then working with what I had. And said, okay, well, this is an area I'm passionate about, right? Because I lived through it. I went through it. I know what it's like. I can show them some things about how to get out of it. Because one of the things I realized that creates burnout, we want to blame the job. But here I stepped out and I was starting to do the exact same things as an entrepreneur. Yeah. So I realized it wasn't the job so much as it was me. I was the one who had the habit of working long hours and working hard and grinding away.
So you had to do some boundary setting with yourself.
Yes.
And maybe time blocking.
Yes.
And putting those, I think one of the biggest things for entrepreneurs and why they gravitate towards, because when I started, coaching wasn't a thing. People didn't have coaches. You had some trainers, but is that when you're an entrepreneur, you don't have that accountability partner that you have in the traditional work setting where you have a boss, where you have a supervisor, where you have a time clock. And so when we become entrepreneurs, sometimes that not having a time clock is our own worst enemy. Not only do we waste time, but sometimes we spend too much time on our business or in our business. And so what did you find that worked best for you to hold yourself accountable?
I think the biggest thing of all the things, there's lots of techniques you can do, but I had to find alignment with me. I had to go within and kind of see, like, it was kind of listen to myself and what my own needs were on a physical, mental, and emotional level, right? I even say on a spiritual level. You know, what was my inside seeking to create that was different than what I'd been doing? And so I really had to recognize, like, it's like feel into, I call it the internal guidance system, like feel into. One of the things I noticed, for example, is Mondays would kind of cause a panic in me because those were chaotic days in my former career. And so I said, well, what could I do that would be better? And I started to, about 3 years in, say, I'm going to ask myself what would be fun. What would light me up? What would be fun? So I would say, what would be more fun than this, right? Getting up on a Monday morning and just grinding away. And I was like, what would be really fun was having Monday off. And then working, and that's my personal development day. That's working on me. It's doing whatever lights me up. It's like unplugging that day. And then Tuesday is the start of my week. And I have maintained that ever since because it has fed me. It has fed me. I am much more productive the rest of the week because I have that Monday day off. So you got to listen to yourself. You're getting internal feedback every day. You got to learn to listen to that internal feedback on your hours, on your relationships, on everything.
I love that. And there was one of my clients, actually, I fought her kind of in the beginning on this, and she calls it her mommy maintenance Monday. And that was the day that she books her nail appointment, her hair appointment, all the things for her, you know, her workouts. And it used to be like I'd try to wiggle work into there a little bit because she was running short once she got into sports. She's a single mom. And then I was like, you know what? That is her day. That centers her week. I'm going to leave it alone. Like, I'm not going to try to get her to move it to Sunday or move it to a different day because, right, feeds your soul. And you can't plan that for somebody. I can't tell someone what their passion is or tell someone what's going to feed their soul. That's something you have to find within. So I love that. I love that piece of business planning is so important, especially for an entrepreneur, because we are choosing to go out on our own because we want that option. Whereas in the normal work world, you don't get that option.
Right.
Somebody tells you what day you're going to work and what time you're going to work, and you have to work around that. So you get to design your life when you're an entrepreneur. You get to design your day and your week. So that's awesome.
Exactly.
When you have a client that's to that place, they've got their idea, they've got their business plan, they have their vision, and then I'm just going to throw out an example. I don't know what all types of clients you have, but say that they're a startup where they need a location. They're going to have brick and mortar to run their business. Can they go to you for those pieces of to get? Because I find that like a lot of them, that's their hard part, is like, where's the best location? How do I get a business license? All of that. Is that something that you mentor them on?
I help them with setting a lot of the basics of like setting up an LLC. What is an LLC? What's an S corp, C corp? All of that stuff. Setting up your getting your tax number, your EIN. You know, some of those really basics. I do not usually work with brick and mortar because I don't have experience with brick and mortar. So I'm like, okay, if you're doing brick and mortar, you really need to have a business plan to look at how much you're spending on the building versus, you know, your expenses versus your income, and kind of figuring that out. So I like to turn that over to somebody who's stronger in that particular area, because there's you have to be very careful, I think, about when you commit to a brick and mortar space.
The financial commitment.
You need to make sure that you have enough income coming in to support that.
I know that.
Right?
Right. That's a big expense. I love it when I work with clients that don't have that versus the ones that do, because it's like, ooh, we have all this room in our budget now, because it does take up so much, but it's about the model you want too. And there's so much now where businesses can be taken online, and you don't need that. Just like where coaching used to be, you know, you had to be in person, and now it's a Zoom call away. You know, your clientele can be. Do you primarily work in this state, or do you have clients all over the U.S.?
Mostly the state, just because this is where I network.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I do have a few. Like I have one over in Nantucket, and it works fine for the type of business that she has. But yeah, and I am looking to expand beyond borders. But I also love being able to work with people locally, because I do have such a network here that I can start connecting them in with the businesses that I do know that are going to be able to support them.
I love it. And you have an event coming up that I'd love you to share about. I know I'm getting the time clock wave down here, but I'd love to give you a couple minutes to share about your masterclass that you have coming up.
Great.
So tell me about what you're looking for, and who is that for?
Yes, I'd love to share that. So this was, I was sharing my story about what I had made all this money. And, I would consider myself wealthy. I had the cars, the house, and all those things. But I wasn't wealthy. I was poor. My health was struggling. I didn't have time for my daughter. I wasn't fulfilled. So I like to talk about what is true wealth, which is that you are feeling fulfilled in all the areas of your life, that you're able to start working on your health. You're able to bring balance in. You're able to have that time off for yourself. You're able to have that time off for your daughter or son or husband or whatever you've got going on else in your life, and really building those relationships as well. Because we've all seen examples of we're working really hard in this area that we deplete the other areas of our life. So we've seen the really hard working dad who then is, has the divorce, things are falling apart, loses contact with the kids because all his energy, for example, is on work. Women can do the exact same thing. So you've got to nurture each of these areas of our life and grow. It's like a plant. We got to water and feed every area. Same with our health. We've got to be doing little steps every day to start feeding that area of our life so we don't deplete it. Because otherwise what happens is you get to that point in your life, like I just talked to a guy, he retired, and I was like, so what are you doing with your time? And his face went almost like gray. He didn't have a thing he was doing anymore. He didn't have a purpose. So now he's just kind of floating along trying to figure out how to fill his time. And so what I tell people is when you follow your passion, whatever those, and it's usually passions, you take that with you all the way up to the end of your life. You don't retire from your passion. You can retire from a job, but you don't retire from your passion. So learning to follow your passion is a big part of that journey of listening to what is it that I'm passionate about, and that is that's your guidance system, saying go this way, go this way, go this way, go this way, and it's multifaceted. So it's not just in work; it's going to affect your relationships, because when you're doing what lights you up, you're shining brighter, and that you attract better people, happier people into your life. You're a better parent. If you've got kids, it's like it affects everything. There's a ripple effect from that. So this mastermind that I've created is called Ignite the Light Abundance Mastermind, because I see the starving entrepreneurs struggling. And one of my clients actually inspired me because she was always worrying about money and thinking of going back to work, right? And so I wanted to teach her about what real abundance is and how do you start to attract abundance through law of attraction. And so one of the things I said is, when it comes to abundance, the biggest obstacles are focusing on what you don't want, what you don't have, and believing the common narrative of wealth. So it's really getting them to understand the more you think about what you don't have, the more you attract that into your life.
Yeah.
And so you've got to learn to change the narrative in your mind about what wealth is, what success is, right? Start to tell yourself, I do have enough, and I would like to attract more, right? And then during the mastermind, I'm going to be sharing the real reasons why most entrepreneurs aren't attracting more wealth and opportunities. So where are we getting stuck in that area? How the common definition of wealth has created a society of people who are actually quite poor. You look around America, you got a lot of sick people, physically sick, mentally, emotionally sick. They're drained. They're doing jobs that are exhausting them. So we've got a serious issue here in America, and we can't keep doing what we're doing. It's not working. And then we're also going to talk about steps you can take to produce true abundance in your business, but also in your life. So how do we create real wealth? And that means wealth in all areas. And then staying in tune with, how do I create a business I love? Like you're saying, the hours that I want to work that are going to feed me, and where I'm going to be working at my best and be at my optimum. These are all part of that. Tuning into yourself and seeing, what are those hours that work for me, So we're going to be covering all that in this masterclass. It's going to be a 2-hour masterclass. And then I'll just tell you right up front, it's really going to be engaging into an invitation to go into a mastermind. Okay. Where we can go deeper in learning these concepts, but more importantly, applying these concepts, where we're actually seeing change in our lives because we're actually learning to apply these principles.
I love it. That sounds very well-rounded, almost like therapy for your business. Mm-hmm. And we all need that. And I always, it plays in my head all the time. We think about doing our when we were coming up on our business planning season, it's like, it's not really about the numbers of how much money you want to make, but it's about, what do you really want your life to look like? Because if we just tie it to a number, that's not real wealth. It's like, what are you going to do with that number? How are you going to feel passionate about the work that you have to do to get to that number? And what is that going to get you for your life? So I'm really looking forward to that, and hopefully be able to join you on that. And I just appreciate so much you coming today and sharing your story with us and what you do, because I think it's so important for entrepreneurs out there to know that that's available to them, to have someone that helps you build this roadmap out, to have not just a successful business, but a business that you love. So I hate it when I walk into a business and I see like they're thriving, but they're unhappy. So how they can become happy in this thriving business, even if your business isn't doing what you want it to do, you might need a coach. But even if it is doing what you want it to do and it's making you the money, but if you're not happy and fulfilled, there's space in there where you might need a coach or a mentor to help get you to that place where you're fulfilled in what you're doing. So
absolutely.
So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I hope everyone has enjoyed that and you have gotten some little pieces out of it, and that you will look up Danielle, and we'll link all of her information in the bio there, and we'll join her on her masterclass. So have a great week.